Hello children, through this video I am going to put focus on the story of The Happy Prince. Before getting into the topic, let us know about its writer. This story is written by Oscar Wilde. He was an Irish poet and was born in Dublin on 16th October 1854. His father was a successful surgeon and his mother a writer and literary hostess. While at Oxford, Wilde became involved in the aesthetic movement. After he graduated, he moved to London to pursue a literary career. With this introduction of the author, let us have an insight into the story now. This story is about a prince. When the prince was alive, he was very happy. After his death, a big statue of his was erected on a pedestal. From there, the statue of prince could see the entire city, and at that time he saw the miseries of the people. He saw the poor people, the homeless, their hunger and starvation. The prince was sad to see all the miseries and sadness of the people and wanted to part with all the gold his statue had along with the precious stones to them. Now, let us understand from this story more clearly why the prince wanted to part with all the gold that he had and his precious stones. One night, there flew over the city a little swallow whose friends had gone away to Egypt 6 weeks before, but he had stayed behind. Then he too decided to go to Egypt. All day long he flew, and at night he arrived at the city and thought of resting in some place. As he was looking around, he saw a beautiful statue made of gold on the tall column and decided to put up there. So he alighted just between the feet of the golden statue of the happy prince and felt happy to have a golden bedroom and prepared to go to sleep. But as he was putting his head under his wing, a large drop of water fell on him. The little swallow cried because there is not even a single cloud in the sky and the stars are quite clear and bright. Yet it is raining. In the meanwhile, another drop had fell on him. Then the little swallow thought that what is the use of this statue if it cannot keep the rain off, and said to himself to look for a good chimney pot, and determined to fly away. But before he opened his wings, a third drop of water fell again on him. He noticed that the eyes of the happy prince were filled with tears, and tears were running down his golden cheeks. His face was so beautiful in the moonlight that the little swallow was filled with pity. "Who are you?" asked the swallow. The statue said, "I am the happy prince." Then Swallow again asked him, "Why are you weeping? You have quite drenched me." The statue started speaking to the swallow. It said that when it was alive, it had not known what tears were. His courtiers called him a happy prince. Now he sat very high and can see the miseries of the city, and asked the swallow to help the people who are in great trouble because his feet are fastened to the pedestal and cannot move. He also started telling the stories of the people who are in trouble and sends Swallow to help them. Firstly, the happy prince started telling the story of a seamstress who is far away. He was embroidering flowers on the satin gown of the queen's maid of honor. The maid was to wear it at the next court ball. In the bed, her little boy laid ill. He was suffering from fever. The happy prince asked the swallow to pick the ruby from his sword hilt and give it to the woman. The swallow helps the woman. First, the swallow said that his friends had gone to Egypt. He was waited for in Egypt, but the happy prince requested him to stay one night. The swallow agreed. He picked up the ruby and flew to the woman's house. He put the ruby near the woman's thimble. He also fanned the boy's forehead. The boy felt a bit better. He sank into a deep slumber. The swallow is asked again to help a playwright. The swallow flew back to the happy prince. He felt warmer, though it was cold. The happy prince told him that it was because he had done a good act. The swallow wanted to fly to Egypt, but the happy prince told him to stay there one more night. He told the swallow that he saw a playwright in a little room. He was trying to finish a play for the director of the theatre, but he was too cold to write. He was hungry also. He asked the swallow to pluck one sapphire from his eye and give that to the playwright. The swallow returns to the happy prince. The playwright saw the sapphire. He was happy. Now he hoped to finish the play. The swallow went to the happy prince. He told him that he had come to bid him goodbye. but the happy prince asked him to stay one more night. Now the swallow is sent to help the match girl. The happy prince told the swallow that there was a little match girl in the square below. All her matches had fallen in the gutter. Her father would beat her if she didn't bring home some money. She was crying. He asked the swallow to pluck out the sapphire from his other eye and give that to her. The swallow flew with the sapphire. He put the sapphire into the little girl's hand. The swallow finally decides to live with the happy prince. The swallow flew back to the happy prince. He told the prince that he would stay with him as he had gone blind. The happy prince asked him to fly over the city and tell him what he saw. He also told the swallow that the most marvelous thing was human suffering and human misery was the greatest misery. The swallow reports what he sees. The swallow flew over the city. He saw hungry children. He also saw many poor people. The happy prince asked him to take leaf after leaf of the fine gold over his body and give to them. The poor now laughed and the children played. Winter sets in. Then there came the snow and then frost. Everything looked white. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder. But he didn't leave the happy prince. However, he could no longer keep himself alive. He at last knew that he was going to die. The swallow asked the prince to let him kiss his hand. The prince told him that he was happy he was going to Egypt. So he told him to kiss him on the lips. But the swallow told him that he was not going to Egypt, he was going to the house of death, and he fell down dead. The statue breaks and is melted. At that moment, there appeared a crack inside the statue. The heart of the happy prince broke into two. The dead swallow lay at its feet. The next morning, the mayor and the town councillors came that way. They looked at the statue and declared that the happy prince was no longer beautiful, so he was no longer useful. Then they melted the statue in a furnace. But the broken heart didn't melt, it was thrown away. God asked one of his angels to bring him the two most precious things in the city. The angel brought him the leaden heart of the happy prince and the dead bird. God told that in the garden of paradise, the little bird would sing forever, the happy prince would praise him forever in his city of gold. Hence, with this explanation, we have come to the end of the story.